Wednesday afternoon. It's 4 p.m. in Central Europe, and it's time for our Space Café 33 Minutes with Marco Ferrazzani about the ESA Ministerial Meeting of 2022, the outcomes and the way forward. And this week feels like our Italian week with Elena, with Marco. Tomorrow we have Meidat, our Emma, and Giorgio Sarcoccia in our events. So benvenuto. So maybe I made it wrong, but I gave my best. As always, we appreciate your participation and your ongoing feedback, and we will learn and improve based on that. I'm Thorsten, the publisher of SpaceWatch.Global, and we are a Europe-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. I would like to thank all of our private and corporate supporters that showed their commitment to keep our independent journalism alive, so we really appreciate that. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletters, and the Space Café podcast. The latest one features Daniel Lee from the Iceland Space Agency. Pretty good story he tells there. And we have also new, very exciting episodes of the Space Café Radio. First and foremost with Josef Aschbacher on the results of the ministerial from last Friday, and also with Kevin O'Connell. Where's your time? Our fan shop, as you see in the chat, is always open for you and waits for your click to become a real space watcher. So please support us if you can. And if you missed any of our previous web talks, we have an archive available on our website in the events section. And you can also find us on YouTube. So I'm totally excited to have him back on our show, on my show. With that, a very, very warm welcome, Dr. Marco Ferrazzani. And Marco, for those of you who doesn't know him, but that's more a rhetorical sentence, because based on the number of participants we have today and registrations we have, everyone seems to know Marco, and he's really a rock star. But in his professional life, he is the senior legal consultant and head of the legal services department at the European Space Agency, based in the headquarters in Paris. And he's also the advisor to the ESA DG and to the ESA Council. He sits on a number of boards, including those of the European Center for Space Law, ECSL, so greetings to Rosanna, and the International Institute for Space Law, IISL. And Marco graduated from the University of Naples, Faculty of Law, where he specialized in and received the university's prize for the best doctoral thesis in international and cooperative law. Before joining ESA, he was admitted to legal practice at the bar in Italy and practiced law in the Milan office of one of the leading international commercial law firms. As a disclaimer, I'm talking with Marco today primarily in his private capacity, so his answers will not represent the official statements of ESA. Once more, Marco, welcome to our show.
Hello, Thorsten, and thank you for inviting me today.
It's a pleasure. I mean, the last one is now 1.5 years ago, so I thought it's a good time. And the topic, I mean, is very, very nice. So when Emma and I interviewed your boss last week, he was over the moon. He was happy with the results, what is great. As I'm not a delegate, as most of us in the audience, I assume, how does this process work? So what happened behind the curtain?
Yes, Thorsten, and I can tell it was a particular pleasure and success for all of us, the team in ESA and national representatives. And me personally, because I joined ESA in space over 30 years ago, I made my career mostly in ESA. And imagine, as a personal secret, I can tell you this was my ministerial council number 13 in my career at ESA. I've done I've seen many different situations, results, some controversial, some very happy, some very secret. And every time is a new story. A ministerial meeting means a meeting of the ministers of the member states. It's a summit of European space. Is the place where decisions are taken for long-term orientations, for programs, for funding, for committing on the mandatory, on the optional programs. It's a mix of many, many things. It's also a place where on the side, member states meet and strike deals on some particular interests. So they bring national interest. We help them. We actually formulate proposals, which are called Director General proposals to member states, but also specific deals on this program, on that area, on that policy area. And this time, and I will discuss, of course, you heard the RDG, there was a big financial commitment. There were specific decisions, also new programs. And also on the side, even before the opening, there was a trilateral statement, so it's called a sort of political agreement about the three ministers of Germany, France, and Italy about how to develop in the future launcher exploitation, which means the use of launcher. More than building it, it comes when they're used and they bring European objects to space and they sell services. And this is going to change next year, quite importantly. We can discuss that. Your question is, how does it work? Well, every ministerial is a long avenue. It takes many months to prepare. And we have prepared under the leadership of Joseph, these program proposals. We started very early, about 1 year ago, in January or so. At that time, the world environment was quite different from today. Well, a bit easier. There was no inflation almost, no war in Europe. There was a flat budget planning, even with some interest to raise the investment in space, because space became more and more evidently an economic advantage. Our narrative about space for country, for citizens, for the economy is working well from the whole space community, be it industry, space agencies, EU, we all work in the same direction. So when we started preparing this ministerial, it was another environment. And then over the months, the situation got more complex because of price variation, inflation, war at the doors of Europe. I have to say, it changed a lot. And even though Joseph maintained the objective of an increase, a notable increase of the European space effort overall, 25%, which is huge, never got there, we managed to achieve 17%. Which is a great success. I can tell you, European space programs, ESA, but also the sum of ESA plus EU and member states, if you take the aggregate, has never been so well financed. We are at the top of an ascending exercise. First of all, we have to be happy that it's like that because it gives more programs, more chances, more technology, more work, but also because space is becoming quite still relatively small, but quite significant part of the national policy agendas of member states. So we are managing the dream of having space, what we call a political element of European space, of European policy in general, of national policies, an element that is obvious in powers like the United States or others, but it was never so much the case in European states. So that's the first thing to say about this ministerial. Secondly, as you asked, behind the curtains, the mechanism. Of course, as we said, the program proposal, we have to sell them, to say the nice word, which means we have to persuade member states to accept the program, and most of it subscribe financially, because the ministerial is the place where a program gets committed financially on a multi-year level. In national systems, there's a national budget every year. The Bundestag in Germany votes a national budget. They want to control it tightly. The ESA Convention gives to ESA a very interesting tool, which is multi-annual financial commitments of the member states. So when we introduce a program like Space Station or the Lunar Gateway or a new launcher, it means we have to commit and finance it over a project of 6, 8, 10 years or more. And that's one of the virtues of the ESA Convention that allows even national government or national space agency who cannot do it on their own to have a system to commit multi-year programs and carry them through, because that's what space requires. We cannot do a program that's only 3 years short. And this has been the case for many programs, like new ones being introduced, like the continuation of previous programs, like the revamping of other priorities and so on. So this is tricky, and it requires a lot of work behind the scene to persuade the delegations, to persuade priority, to also receive, which is natural, lobbying for national space industry who want to receive contracts, because it's a system of investment, and then distributing contracts all over Europe. This also means by the various ESA teams, as Joseph always said, there are many different ESA colleagues that make the success, preparing well the proposals, explaining them to industry, to national representatives, to national parliaments also. Some of these proposals were reviewed and accepted in parliament commissions in each state, so that the minister, when he comes, he speaks on behalf of the whole member state, not just on behalf of a national agency. It's a commitment of Germany, it's a commitment of France and Italy over several years. It also requires that we listen actively and we give solutions if a country cannot provide a level of financing for 1 or 2 years, or cannot find a place in the so-called distribution of contracts over areas. So to compensate something that does not happen in the program, it will happen in another program, because the so-called geographical distribution of ESA contracts is a global number across all ESA programs, not just program by program or activity by activity. So it's a global return that we deliver and we guarantee to member states over every 3-year period.
I see. But how does this work with the programs? I mean, you have mandatory programs, you have optional programs that are mandatory, are committed by the member states, the optional can be done, and the subscriptions. It sounds for me that it's all pretty much set before the delegations go to Paris. But as you mentioned, the German Bundestag or the German government, what we heard from the German government was not the expected 1.3 billion, it was more 800 million or a contribution. So, and that sounds for me that it seems to be clear when they travel to Paris. So, or how flexible is that? So how does it work at the end? Is it like
yes,
long night negotiation and gambling?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, very much so. Because what is actually fixed before coming to Paris in the days and weeks before is what we call the mandatory program, which is basic activities and science. And then we know very well, it is a program of 3 billion over 5 years. Germany as a fixed rate, 22% of that. Italy, 16%, Spain, 7%. We know that number. They know, and that's understood. What varies a lot, but that's only one part of ESA. 3/4 of these activity is what we call in jargon optional programs, which mean programs are decided on a case by case. They don't exist every time. And they are all decided for a period, as I say, 3 years, 6 years, 8 years, only for the time of development and exploitation, like space station, launcher, Earth observation, or space safety. And these programs are proposed, is the big menu. That's what's called financial subscriptions. And each of them is actually a multilateral agreement between states. Only the states that do participate, that's why it's called optional, because not all have to participate. And on a level of investment, a subscription rate, which is a percentage of the total, which varies depending on the interest of the state and depending how much they wish to see contracts coming back to the industry. That varies a lot. And that's where there's a large variation. And nobody knows a week before how much will be fixed, because the states fix the amount in each program and they make choices. The Director General ESA gives a proposal. The proposal was 18 and more billion over a large palette of different choices. And then member states come to that day and they make the choice. Germany decides so much in that program, a bit less in the other one, a bit more in the other. And the interaction between 22 member states makes the result that you see. But in all the ministerial, we were never sure about the results 2 days later. It's the result of meeting, discussing the program, even in splinter meetings on the side. We, of course, try every time to argue for more, to complete financial coverage and over the time of the program, sometimes we get it. Sometimes we get it lower than the objective with the threshold. Sometimes we even get more funding that's proposed. It was the case last time on Copernicus. It was the same this time on Scale Up or Boost and other programs. Sometimes some programs get left over because they don't even reach 50 or 60%. And of course, you cannot do a satellite with only 60% of funding. You cannot do a half satellite flying in space. So our skill is to make the proposal which are well tailored, that attract interest for the largest number of member states, not all necessarily. It can be 22, but it can be less. We call them participating states. At the same time, Joseph was particularly proud that this time, this ministerial, nobody was left over. It means all the program proposed were able to start work. So there was no program abandoned there. It happened years ago. I remember 2012 in Naples, the moon program was actually abandoned by a large contributor that openly said, oh, I made my mind, I will not pay for this, and then the program can be canceled, which is quite dramatic on the last day. This time, it was not the case. All programs were adopted. Some are fully funded, some are not fully funded, as it happens. So what they do, we'll have to reduce the content of the program to match the level of funding. So if it's only 70% funded, we have to reduce 30%, which is painful, of course, but we have to do it. And we have to align to the money provided. So reduce the content of the program, which is being done or being done in the next few days. So that by the end of this year, before we adopt the annual budget 23, which will be in a few weeks, we have exactly known the amount of each program and what they will do in 23, 24, 25, and so on over the years to come. So you can imagine it's quite a complex system. This time, if you take the so-called table of financial contributions, there are several pages and tables quite refined with a lot of numbers which are fixed, and that's our work. So it's a very, very specific exercise. It's not one decision, it's several decisions. And by the way, they're all public in the ESA website. You can download the ESA resolutions and the ESA press release with the numbers. Including all the numbers for the programs and for each member state, how much they put in ESA from Ministerial 19 and 22. You can have it, you can download and see, and then we go in fine detail in each of the program, how much they funded and what they contain and what they not contain. The success is that Joseph managed to have his programs approved. There was an increase of 70% from last time, which is already huge. It's a record never so high. Nobody was left over. In a situation of the geopolitics and very much a European, quite unknown situation of financial affordability of member states, I call it, in my word, like in a situation of strange days. We are in strange days internationally now today. And in the end, it was a magic result after 48 hours of discussion, meeting, on the spot, behind the mandatory, I said, some governments represented by ministers were able to change their position and add more financial coverage to some programs which they believed they were important, and they had to start with a strong participation, like Germany increasing the contribution to some key programs. Days before they thought it was unnecessary, and then the minister on the spot was convinced it was necessary, and he had the contributions. So this is the magic of that European summit. It's a interplay between the different interests. And this, I want to say, it's important because in the end, it is a formal representation of what we call national interests of the different European countries. They come together, they converge into a common proposal and common interest. Because, a note I can tell, space is growing. It's growing the so-called national interest, national programs, national operators, national space laws, national regulations. Space is becoming in the last years much more to the attention of national deciders. And ESA provides the magic of make them converge in common European programs with a specific, very original formula that ESA, which is not the European Union. European Union has another method, another formula. But ESA is this intergovernmental tool that does it that way. And this time we've been as successful as ever.
when we interviewed Joseph, he said more or less, it would be sad if we have more money than we have offers or programs. And for me, it sounds a bit like you're aiming high, you put your margin on it, or you put your add-on on it, and then you are happy with what you get. I mean, the 16.9 or versus the 18.5, there is a gap, but it seems everyone is happy and nobody is talking about the missing whatever 1.6 billion anymore.
True. But this is the classical play of public investment and public spending. Okay. Probably you never, even if you look at the US Congress appropriation of space program, which is a lot larger, NASA never gets exactly what they ask for. And also, Joseph uses a phrase that we always use, is better to have more content and ideas than money. That means we can do a lot of meaningful projects, than the other way around. It means having fewer ideas than the money that flows too easily. We like to earn our money with good ideas that deliver good results in the years to come and deliver that to European industry and citizens. So in a way, Joseph is proud that the ideas were rewarded with money, and we still have better ideas and new ideas for the years to come.
We will talk about it soon, because after the ministerial is before the ministerial. That's something I understood. So you talked about the success, and we can hear from you. We can see it in the press that everyone seems to be happy, smiling at the moment. So why do you think is that success? What are the ingredients, and what are the lessons learned, especially on your end for that? Because you said you have seen 13 of the ministerials, and at least from the outside, it looked much more transparent than the years before, and even much smoother, so to say. So
no, it's true. First of all, transparent, because the first morning was openly broadcast. You could follow it live. And I know you did. And we are aiming and proposing more and more live debate, and each member state made a political statement, which was live, everyone could listen to, which means that member states are interested in space policy nationally, but also into putting it and bringing it into the ESA system. And also, and this is in a way, might sound as a surprise to many who see now space in Europe being done, growing by the European Union, which is good. European Union does it, it's worked very well. But indeed, it also shows, let me say, a parallel trend along with the EU, that space development are indeed very national. As I said, mostly national, local, with national interests, national operators, national priorities. If you look in ESA program, every important program has a leadership or interest of Germany in that, Italy in moonlight, or also in exploration, France in launchers along with Italy, and then the UK in Earth observation and that. So you see national drives, which is, in a way, ESA is a legitimate formalization of that kind of national interest, but also making sure that it can happen with others. So could sound like unusual, but it's a surprise, and for me, it's not a surprise, that European space is at the same time European integration conversion with the European Union, though we hit a European level, in a way, not the states, it's the EU who does it. And then the states who themselves, among themselves, they have this magic formula of ingredients melting together in a place called ESA with intergovernmental agreements. So the two methods, as you know me, I always argue the two methods are equally valid and legitimate. And by the way, if you come by the numbers today, ESA will grow to an annual budget of like 8 billion and more, out of which 2 are EU and 6 other are from the member states. So the proportion today is that member states, being national through ESA, invest in space at least 2 or 3 times the order of magnitude more than the EU itself in European annually. But we shouldn't see it as a graduation of who is more legitimate. All systems are good as long as they bring investment, benefits, result, better quality of life to citizens, better technology, better knowledge to our continent, to make Europe become what we aim to become, so-called space power Europe. So this is the objective.
I see. Okay. From the European point of view, and we will go to that in a bit, I had the chance, or I think 2 months ago, to be at the European Defense conference in Brussels and moderate their panel with Bushoy and others. And the main objective for Europe at the moment is energy and defense. So I think we can expect something more along this line on the defense part, also the question of space. But in our off-tape conversations the last months, we heard many people that complained about the ESA administration, the bureaucracy, the politics, especially of the Big Four. And so that we got feedback like, we are going better bilateral than via ESA. Will you review these internal processes? Because the picture you drew a minute ago was ESA is representing the European space interests, the nationals, as well as the common European ones. And we heard from a few people really that they're questioning that.
I have to say, I'm not surprised. I always heard that for a long time, especially those countries who have a larger space interest and budget from a national point of view, and I understand them. They always have this dilemma. Do we put our space priority to the national program or a program with others? Mm-hmm. And with others could be in a place called ESA, or even EUMETSAT is a space program in cooperation, or in another form like the EU. And this is legitimate that the national government, the National Space Agency, address the question, define what they want to do. It's part of, as I said, different levels are equally. Now, some states, for several reasons, including maintaining a national capability autonomous, they maintain a national space program. The classical important case is France, who has always had it, a quite good dose of a national space program managed by a national agency, which then became a model for others in Europe. So I'm not surprised. Now, the question is, there's this strong power of attraction to make European programs. Why? Because the contribution of the state in the ESA system of various contribution is almost like enjoying an effect of multiplication, because others will join from states, large one and small one. And then you get the European program that nationally you can even afford to do it. Of course, the alternative is to do national only or binational programs. The news from last time, from 3 years ago, is that in ESA, we have concluded direct agreements with some national programs, like Italy, Spain, and Greece, where even the national activities financed by the EU Resilience Fund are national programs, decided nationally, but ESA becomes a sort of technical assistant to shape and help the national program to shape contracts and manage the contract with the national industry. So ESA is still used not as a place of co-funding, but a place of space management, because we have the knowledge and the people. And here you can see another way of using ESA knowledge and skills. We don't need and we don't have to capture all the funding in various ways, but it was still national, even binational programs. It happened already, where two countries decide their policy objective is national funding, and they entrust ESA to manage the delivery of the satellites, and where we go as a property to the national entity and so on. It can happen, it can be done. Then whether it is administration or bureaucracy, I can tell you, I've been working on that, studied it long, and when I go deep into national administrations, I can find a lot of administrative rules and procedure, which I can tell you are often more burdensome than the ESA ones. So, but then it's your judgment. You take you national authority, the decision. I don't have judgment of national procedures. They decide which is best to fit. But evidence shows that in the end, European programs tend to attract more than national programs. It's a fact.
I see. let's look ahead. We are now, if I'm counted it correctly, 1,059 days ahead of the next ministerial. What's next for ESA? What to expect, especially next year?
Okay, next year, 23, will be quite exciting and full of challenges that we have to do, and we're used to that at ESA. First of all, the result of this ministerial to implement the programs. That's the first job that ESA DG and we all have to do. We have received the approval of the ESA program contributing to EU secure connectivity, so-called ERIS program. ESA has a small but very qualified part to do it, and our job in doing that is doing that well, which is start qualifying technology that will be used then at the disposal of the EU program. Human direct access to space. There will be very soon, in February, a report from a qualified group of experts, even non-space and economic experts, who to whom we have addressed the question, does Europe really need to have autonomous human access to space with our own launcher, capsule, and human program to space like the US and the other space power have? Because this would be an element of space power. And then we have to face the wave of business and commercialization. There's a new program called Scale Up, very exciting, very well known, that will help a lot of startups and European companies to exceed also to the financial markets. ESA will play a role as a guarantor, technical quality and viability for the financial investors. These are new things. And then overall governance. You know well, you know me, European space policy is explicitly mentioned as an objective in two treaties, the ESA Convention and the EU Lisbon Treaty. That's a long-lasting question, how to fit. And I'm always open to debate. Both are equally valid, as I said, but we have to still find the right fit of the two systems to work together. We are very happy that ESA program then became EU program, like it was the case of EGNOS, Galileo, and Copernicus. They became EU programs with the ESA involvement. And will be the case also for EU secure connectivity. ESA proposed by the EU with strong success by the Commission, but that with ESA qualified the participation in developing it. So, and this together we call the European ambitions that we have to be submitted, the various points, to a Council of European member states, that in jargon we call the Space Council 2023, next November in Seville, Spain, called by Spain chairing the European Union Council of Ministers. It will be a quite exciting moment because it will be less about tables, sorry, and more about policy orientations. And this will happen next November.
Okay. As you mentioned, IRIS2 and the ESA involvement, can you specify that a little bit more? Because for me, I thought it is an EU program. So, and especially now as ESA has an involvement, so what does it mean for the member states or the EU members, or better for the non-members of the EU, but which are members of ESA? That sounds, at least for me, quite complicated, but maybe there's an easy answer.
Let's take it from the legal, but also a simple look. If you read the EU regulation, which is presently under approval, it explicitly mentions that EU secure connectivity will use the knowledge and skills of ESA for preparing and also adding resources. So what ESA Council has done last week has approved a 600 million program where ESA will start experiencing and sorting out contracts that will be used by the European Union. But of course, the EU and the Commission will decide what is the constellation, which satellites, and who is going to be the famous concessionaire. And this will happen only in 1 year's time. At that point in time, ESA will already be ready with having developed the technology, then you can use. It's a classical and very useful development model where ESA as a space management agency can develop things and then you can put it at work. Exactly the same way we've done with Galileo and Copernicus. Okay. It's just that this time, of course, EU connectivity and the objectives are quite ambitious. A complete secure connectivity for all European public users and even commercial. These are the ambition of the Commission that Breton explicitly explained. It's quite exciting to see that this was followed by the EU organs. And ESA is offering its capacity, but I stress it will be EU to take the important decisions of where to go, when, how much to spend, and who will decide about the contract being placed. Which means, in the EU words, that it will go to EU member states and companies only from EU member states, or the states around the EU that have agreements to participate in the program. And some have done it, like Switzerland, Norway, in Galileo and Copernicus, for instance. UK had another trend. It was part of it and then, as you know, left. So Switzerland, Norway, UK, of course, remain part of ESA. They can participate in developments. They have good industry, but they don't. When it comes to the day of EU decision, they do not have at all the legal guarantee that the EU may include them or not. They need to write an agreement with the European Commission, and this they have 1 year's time to decide about that. We always hope for the better that it happens.
But does it mean that IRIS2 will be a complete new setup constellation, or because there are at least two participants that have operational networks with OneWeb, one has not, or with Rivada, but it's on its way. But these are networks proposed also in this framework. But it sounds for me that it will be a new one. Is that a definite decision?
For sure, it will be a new service under the EU with EU strict requirements, guaranteed signals with cryptology and guarantee because it's secure services.
Sure.
The service will be new. The infrastructure, it will depend on the proposals that will arrive on the table of the European Commission, because there's a principle of open competition, right? So Commission will issue an invitation to a concession, will evaluate in various steps. It's called progressive competitive negotiation. Mm-hmm. And then over that time, we shall see the technical proposals and the Commission will decide which is better and to whom to give the concession. This is the job of the EU regulation and the European Commission. Whereas ESA will do parallel technological developments and assist the Commission in evaluating the best technical solutions and the validity of the technical schemes. But for sure, it's not easy to build a constellation. It will be the operators to propose directly to the Commission.
I see. Okay. No. Well clarified. Last question from me, because we are running out of time as usual. Let's make a huge leap. So what do we expect from ESA in the next 10 years to come? So then when you are on your, 17th ministerial then by that time?
Now, first element, you can see already two elements in the present resolutions, if you read attentively, that already qualify the next 10 years of ESA work. First of all, there is a Director General called long-term plan over the next 10 years on the so-called objectives and requirements for technology in Europe. You can read it. It's in the resolution number 4, and he speaks about the long term over the years 23 to 32, imagine, with objectives like exploration of the moon, intelligent systems around the Earth observation, telecommunication, robotic, artificial intelligence. Then there's a statement in the same resolution from the Minister, and it says, and I use the words of Minister, ESA will remain the central tool of the states for European programs in cooperation, for national programs to be assisted by ESA, and for worldwide programs in which Europe participates, like going to the moon or to Mars. This is already set politically. Mm-hmm. What we need to fill in the next years, of course, there are big challenges. ESA, as a tool of Europe, has to demonstrate that we give European a competitive advantage to ESA to become a space power. Because as I said, we have many ingredients, but we don't have a complete program with human intervention or autonomous components of European industry to get rid of export control regulation. So we have elements of the European programs that don't yet make Europe as a complete space power like US. And ESA is also to evolve in terms of industrial policy objectives and values, the way we procure, and we also involve all the participating states in business investment, including commercial investment, and in the so-called European supply chain to be more complete. So these are objectives, I can tell already, that cannot be realized in 1 year, take several years to come. And also, then there are one element which came obvious within the three main countries, Germany, France, and Italy. The fact to address some fundamental issues and the modalities of European exploitation of launchers. When they come to service, how do they sell service? We have historical incumbents like the family of Ariane, Vega now, and the small launcher being developed in various countries, operators. We are used to the classical system of public service and public launchers in a sort of PPP, which is Arianespace, within public and private. Now there will be new entrants, there will be new manufacturers and new producers that have new access to the market. Of course, so the circumstances are changing, but not only Europe, also in the rest of the world. So I can bet with you and give you a rendezvous in 10 years' time, that the scenario of launchers in 5-10 years will be quite different from the one we have today. First of all, full responsibility of each economic actor that does the production. In other words, whoever produces has to take the risk and have a direct access to the market. And secondly, the technology, reusability, the new engines that we already started with Prometheus, the efficiency of small launchers in certain new categories will be demonstrated quite well in the next 3 to 5 years. So in the next 10 years, in 10 years from now, the launcher sector will not look like the one of the past 10 years. I'm sure about that. And that's a big challenge for ESA to realize. And finally, in 3 years' time, I'm sure that the German government will call for a new Council of Ministers of ESA in Germany, because this is the tradition. Those who have chaired this meeting are going to call for next ESA Ministerial Council in 25. So the cycle, having it at least every 3 years, will continue over the next year. So see you there.
See you in Berlin. Yeah, hopefully it will be in Berlin. Thank you very much to our audience. They've been very, very active. But we are running out of time. I would like to try to merge two questions into one. The question from Maria and Pauline. As defense is becoming more and more important for Europe, will ESA change its position or adapt one day the military aspect when it's within its convention? And the other one is more on the STM SSA side. There was also more money in, but where is ESA's vision for the future of STM? Very briefly. I know these are big topics.
Very briefly. The ESA Convention provides European cooperation for peaceful purposes. In the end, this definition, what it means is for interpretation, application by the member states. And we already had various round discussion with the member states, in which the conclusion was that, of course, ESA can also do what's called dual use work.
Sure.
And in space, basically, everything is becoming dual. What you develop for civil can be used for defense. So ESA itself is not the issue. We can do this kind of dual program. But then the use of this program for defense is a decision of the member states. In the end, they do defense policy and operation, not ESA. Okay. ESA is not a defense operator, will never be. It's member states that can use the result of ESA program also for their own defense operations. So it's the end, it's not ESA itself, it's member states who have to decide. And they're open to that. Many are open. As to space traffic management, we have a very good technology, especially in our European Operations Center in Darmstadt. They're excellent engineers, and we have to make sure that they are involved in whatever European Union policy decision will be. It's good that it's a policy, say, orientation and raising interest at the level of EU with all member states. Again, because if you want Europe to be a space power negotiating important position agreements worldwide, probably you can do that well. But the technical knowledge resides in the European Operations Center, where Europeans have invested since a long time. So again, ESA is very much open and available to provide technical knowledge and even development of systems managed by ESA and then used by European Union. It's an ideally complementary attitude that we take, of course.
Big happy family. So I will talk with Holger and to get out more from him. Mille grazie, Marco. It was a great pleasure, as always, to have this conversation with you. And with that, Elena, back to you.
Thank you, Torsten, and thank you, Marco. Our Italian week, as Torsten mentioned earlier, continues. So let me remind you of the upcoming events. Tomorrow, on the 30th of November, 4 p.m. Central European Time, tune in for our Space Café Israel by Meidad Pariente with Ran Livnev of ImageSat. And to connect the dots, Meidad is of Italian ascent. And later tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central European Time, as always, we're having Space Café Italy by Dr. Emma Gatti in Italiano, of course, and in a conversation with nobody else than the president of the Italian Space Agency, Giorgio Saccoccia. On the 1st of December at 8 p.m., join us in the 59th Space Bar by Astro Agency. And on the 6th December at 4 p.m., we have our Space Café 33 Minutes live from Scotland. We're still working on that one, but we'll let you know more soon. On the 8th of December at 5 p.m., join our Space Café Brazil by Ian Grosner. And as usual, all events are going to be online on Eventbrite for you to register. And we would like to hear your feedback. So please check in with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And don't forget to sign up for our daily and bi-weekly newsletters. And if you'd like to treat yourselves to something special, become a Space Watcher today, or help us in the supporter program. Thank you, Marco, for the insightful talk and for being our guest tonight. And thanks again to the entire team behind the scenes for doing this great job week by week again. I hope you will all stay safe and healthy. And thank you to our audience for joining us. I hope to see you in the next upcoming events. And in the meantime, visit our website and follow us on social media. And don't forget, become a Space Watcher. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.